Let's do it. El Sine is going to be the first map for the second PvP and the last PvP before you guys are worried that it's all day, every day PvP. Only 2 of them today. I think both of them absolute bangers. The first one didn't go to distance. Perhaps this one will. In the bottom left side, we are looking at the main base of the Protoss, who's living in the Netherlands, representing Team Liquid. It is SKillous.
His opponent in the upper right, also living in the Netherlands. He's from the Rebellion now. It's our captain. It's Harstem.
SKillous had a funny PvP journey so far in the playoffs, because he had a bit of a nightmare best of 5 against Max Specs. Then again, who doesn't? When you play PvP against Max Specs and Max Specs has 0 ping, he's not very fun to play against. I would say the only one who does kind of alright against him in that department is Showtime. If it truly matters, as Showtime is good in Phoenix against Phoenix, just like the PAX is. But then he had a very strong 3-0 victory over Christianer, and that one kind of surprised me a little bit. Because Christianer has been good lately, he's crazy, he's wild, he had a fantastic Sunday already, because he had some great success in the WTL. I did not predict SKillous to 3-0 Christianer, so he's got some of that momentum perhaps that he can carry with him into this PvP.
Yeah, SKillous is an interesting player, right? As you take a look at it, because on the one hand, at his highest level, he is one of the best Protoss players in Europe. I mean, if you're in the top 12 of an EPT, of an ESL Masters regional in Europe, you're one of the top 12, you're one of the best players in Europe. But like, at his highest level, he can compete with the best of the best. And he's just, this trajectory he's been on over the last couple of years has been so incredible. But the consistency isn't there yet. So there are days when he can bop 3-0 Christianer, who we'd say, you know, he's like top 32, but I don't know that we put him top 12. And then there are times where he just, you know, would squeak out a victory over Christianer 3-2, and it depends on the day, depends on how he's feeling, depends on his form, how much he's practicing, his understanding of the matchup. So, you know, Roddy, seeing him 3-0 Christianer there in the first stage, maybe that's good news for how he's going to play today.
Yeah, I always feel like whenever I watch Nikita in such a big best of 5 like this one, lower bracket, tournament live on the line, that the first game is incredibly important for him. If he can just find his rhythm, pull off a couple of great moves, even if he ends up losing it, but he plays well, then I think he's going to be completely fine for the rest of the best of 5. If the first game is a bit of a nightmare, where he has a bad blink, or he just messes up completely in the defense, he can actually start falling apart real quick. Where I think Harstem is a little more collected in that regard, has more experience, of course, as well. The captain has been around forever. Started off in Warcraft 3 a very long time ago. Was never a top-tier Warcraft 3 player, but, you know, he was good enough to already play a few matches. And when it comes to StarCraft 2, I feel like he's been one of the better players in Europe for the last 12, if not 13 years. Won big tournaments in 2016, so I think Harstem, sure, you want to win game 1, but it's not the do-or-die scenario, where for SKillous, the start of a best of 5, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah, I'll buy that one. I mean, Harstem, a consummate pro here. He's also really impressive that somehow he just is able to manipulate time. So the last 7 years, the last 10 years have all been the year of Harstem. I don't know quite how that works, Roddy, but, you know, he makes it happen. The ageless wonder. But for now, he's moving across the map. He's got a lot of sentries. He's got some stalkers. And more importantly, this is a robo opener. So yes, there's an observer on the map right now. He's not going to be able to trap that stalker really with a force field. But I expect to see a Warp Prism fairly soon. And is this the most aggressive thing? No, he's got a third base on the way. But he is giving himself some opportunity to get some damage done and start to lean into SKillous maybe a little bit more than SKillous would like at this point.
SKillous, his hallucinated Phoenix, did not actually see it, and now Harstem is going to move out, he's going to try to deny the skull, and he almost gets it, but he doesn't totally get it, and now SKillous is probably wondering, what are you trying to hide, mate? And at this point, he knows. He's like, whoa, okay, you're trying to get away with broad daylight robbery over here. Super quick third base for Harstem in PvP. And that could have something to do with that new sentry as well, right? The Protoss players are just a little more confident that they can hold whatever their enemies throw at them, because you don't just make sentries anymore only for their ability to drop a Guardian Shield or a Force Field or get some scouting info, but they're actually pretty good in the straight-up fight as well.
Yeah, that they are. They just strip shields away so quickly, and when we're talking about Stalkers or Immortals, they actually do a pretty good job. But Roddy, I feel like we don't see a ton of these macro robo openers. Like, generally, your opponent gets a robo, it's because they're 3-gate roboing, they're 4-gate roboing, something like that. They're getting aggressive on the map. So Now that we see Harstem, this is just a defensive macro robo opener, quick third base, eventually getting into blink, but not before a quick pit stop for charge. Like, how do you when we look at these setups, we don't see a lot of these robo openers for a reason. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think it's not very good against a Stargate opening because then you just have too much of an immobile army to really keep 3 mineral lines safe. But since he knew it wasn't, SKillous actually going for a Glaive Adept, cancels it, fires up charge anyway. I almost have the feeling that Harstem just wants to go into a quick Templar Archives, and then he can get that beefy, bulky PvP army of Zealots with charge, a bunch of Archons, a couple Sentries, and a few Archons in the mix as well. And that's super difficult to deal with if you're Skillous and you open up with Blink, as he's actually chasing a Hallucinated War Prism here all the way to the bottom right side. Like, Blink Stalkers are fantastic, but the one thing that they don't really want to deal with is a whole bunch of Immortals, Zealots with charge, and Archons showing up their front door when the numbers are just not really there yet for the Stalkers to chip their way through these high HP Protoss units.
Yeah, I really like the idea of actually getting Twilight or getting Glaives. Again, just because this is going to be this Immortal charge lot type of army, eventually getting into Archons, and Stalker Adept with a couple support units actually can do fairly well, right? You just get a bunch of Adepts, the Zealots are dead, and then Stalkers blink on top of the Mortals, and, you know, what are you going to do? But SKillous just going playing a lot more of well, no, he canceled charge. He's got Glaives on the way once again. But because he's waffled so much about this, Roddy, I don't know, this is ready in time.
I don't really get what SKillous is doing there. That really doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't take that long to get charged. You're also not going to have Glaives ready for this attack. Harstem is going up to 4 bases of 2 gases, by the way. I'm like checking, is this Christiana? No, it's not, because Harstem has a bunch of Immortals. Very unusual strategy here coming out of Harstem. Curious to see what he's going to be able to do with it. If he takes out that battery, then naturally he can maybe just walk in there. Needs to be careful that he doesn't lose his War Prism. He's wondering, where do I want to fight? He's going to drop those force fields there. Now you can indeed split up a couple of Zealots, go for that battery. And this is just going to be an old school, very chaotic PvP fight with force field galore. And yeah, a bunch of Zealots storming into each other.
Yeah, for now, a lot of the Zealots are dead. What are you looking at, Wise? 2 Sentries to 4, which, you know, it's been a long time as the Blaze going to get the War Prism there. Very nice. Yeah, you trade a Stalker for it. If you're Skillous, you're so happy about that one. But it's been a long time, Roddy, since we've been looking at PvPs or other matchups, really, and we say, yeah, you know, let me count the Sentries. I need to see how many force feeds are available because, you know, generally, well, okay, that's not quite fair. Like 4 or 5 minutes in, sure. But generally, by 8, 9, 10 minutes into the game, the tech's developed enough. Maybe there are Archons on the map, whatever it is, where, you know, force fields are not quite as dominant as they would otherwise have been. But in this case, hey, Harstem, he made the attack happen, didn't quite get what he wants, and now behind this, he's been a very greedy boy, Roddy. He's got his 4th base done. It's mining. He's up 10 workers. So even if that attack didn't work, I mean, the macro behind this is just going like gangbusters.
Yep, Skill is actually getting a cannon now as well. Maybe worried about Zealot counterattacks or maybe even a DT or something. He is going to have a ridiculous amount of Adepts, and the Adepts are going to be incredibly good against the Zealots of Harstem. The bigger problem is that he might be forced to fight in range of a battery, of a cannon, and I think the Immortals and the Archons are going to be problematic, but the Archon count is low. Only a single Archon and no battery here yet. It's hard to say how this is going to go. We do know that if nothing happens in the next minute, Harstem is going to be very happy, because then that Archon count goes from like 1 all the way up to 4 or 5. For Skillous, it's basically now or never with all these Adepts. Against the Zealots, he doesn't have too much to worry about. Everything else could become scary, though.
Yeah, you know, as much as we talk about it, you know, Zealots being horrible against Adepts, sure, fine. Archons are really, really nice, but this is so many Adepts. What is it? This is, I mean, you're right. This is pretty all-in coming out of Skillous, but at this point, it's only the Archons that are remaining. And, you know, at a certain point, Roddy, even if Adepts are bad against Archons, when you have like 27,000 Adepts and 2 Archons, doesn't really matter. So this Adept Immortal couple Stalker type of all-in coming out of Skillous is doing marvelously. Yeah, there was a run-by, but Adepts, they go deal with the Zealot run-by really nicely. And now, I mean, I was going to say, I think you almost complete the shade. It's not like there's anything that Harstem has that properly handles this.
Yeah, I think he could have let it done, but he's not going to do it. Skillous is going to play it safe. Why the hell not? Look at the ridiculous amount of Adepts. Harstem is about to get his hands on +2 ground weapons, but I'm afraid it's just a little bit too late. GG gets called. Skillous still wins game 1, even if he was a little indecisive there. We're going Glaives. Just kidding. We're going Charge. More than halfway done. Just kidding. We're going Glaives again, and it worked out. Harstem will probably look at that in the final moments and he will say that went wrong for two reasons. Reason number one is that he didn't have a battery. A battery would actually be so much more useful there than a single cannon, because SKillous' army not great in sniping a shield battery. Adepts don't have range, stalker count not high enough. And then the second was that Harstem was about to get 2 more Archons. They finished up, but they were stuck in the back of the army. We often joke about how Archons have T-Rex arms, you know, they can just never really get in range. And by the time that those Archons could finally participate in the fight, every single Zealot was already gone. So, well done by SKillous. Felt like a weird, hectic, chaotic game, but it gets the job done, and I'm sure he's pumped.
Yeah, no, I feel like generally when I see these glaive adept type of ideas against mass charts, it's like, you know what, I'm behind. You know, this is my Hail Mary. I'm going to go try it. If it works, great. If not, I'm out. But this was SKillous playing a macro game with, I don't even know how many glaive adepts. It was a ton of them. Pretty cool, right? And I think part of it was Harstem had an opportunity to scout how many adepts there were, but maybe just a little bit too late in terms of figuring it out.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to transition from 2 gas to all the gases. Harstem basically was on 2 gases all the way until his 4th base was done. And he's like, okay, now I feel like, especially after losing the prism, but I think he was already happy to go home because there's no need to take a game-deciding fight in your opponent's natural. When you have 4 bases, they have 3, and you have more workers. There was no need for that. So I think Harstem was always planning on going home. It's just that transition from 2 all the way up to 5 or even 6 gases to make a bunch of Archons. You need a little bit of time for that, and SKillous was just never going to give him that time. So well done. Great call, obviously, by SKillous to just absolutely fully send it. Because if Nikita waits another minute there, yeah, then those adepts, instead of looking awesome, are going to look very silly.
Well, you know, things look silly, but it's another game. It's another opportunity for the man of the bottom right or upper right in the blue for the Rebellion. It's Harstem.
And this man now winning 4 PvPs in a row in the players of the ESL Masters Spring Europe Regionals. Can he make it 5 representing Team Liquid? This is SKillous.
So that's got to be a one-off, right, Roddy? You know, glaive adepts to counter zealots, and I think you're right. I think it's really important that you talk about the fact that, yeah, there was just no gas, so Harstem couldn't transition all that well. Certainly not fast enough, but even still, mass glaives to go and counter charge a lot of Mortal Archon, that's got to be a one-off, right? We're not going to see that again this series.
Now, it was a very unique game because it may look similar where you're like, oh, it's PvP and they're building units that we often see, but the way that Harstem went about it was not standard to me at all. Where he went mega quick 3rd base, then he moves out with Zealot Charge, Immortal Sentry, and he actually goes for a very quick 4th base. We see sometimes Christiana going up to 4 bases of 2 gases, but he will always open up with Blink Stalkers for a bit of map control, and then you get a lot of gateways. You put all your minerals in gateways and Zealots. Like, we're familiar with that. I'm not familiar doing it after Sentry Immortal with an ultra quick 3rd base. So it was very unique, but a 10 out of 10 decision by SKillous in the end to go for Glaive Adapt. Maybe just realizing that what Harstem is doing, it's impossible for Harstem to do all of that and then also have a lot of gas. Like, that's just, you gotta make a sacrifice somewhere eventually. And I guess SKillous just said, this is the moment where I know Adepts are gonna shine brighter than the sun, and Adepts will be better than Zealots. Zealots become better once the armies get more finesse and complicated and higher tech. We can worry about more Archons, Guardian Shields, Disruptors perhaps down the line. That's when Zealots are way better. But if it's just the Zealots versus Adepts, yeah, then Adepts just win.
They are very good at the video game. And it's funny, right? You say, yeah, as the simple units, as the army gets more complicated, the simple units gets better, which is kind of fair, actually. So, kind of an interesting way to talk about it. But SKillous, we saw Harstem go for the Robo opener. In game number 1, it was a macro opener. He tried to go put pressure on 3 bases, but he was getting the 4th base behind that, developing his economy really nicely. SKillous, though, this time, I don't see a probe down in the natural. We got the Robo on the way. How aggressive does SKillous want to play this, Roddy?
Very, 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 very aggressive. And I'm taking a look at the natural of Harstem. Harstem does not have a pylon in production on the low ground. That's kind of odd, right? Where now we might find ourselves in a scenario where Harstem either cancels the Nexus or lets it finish, and then he won't really bother defending it, as he does drop a nice force with here, so he's gonna get an Adept for free. But Harstem needs way more than a free Adept to save this Nexus against 3-gate Robo. Like, 3-gate Robo is going to hit incredibly hard here, off one base, of course, coming out of SKillous. Harstem is going to get a battery for a split second in his main mineral line. That's not where he needs it. Okay, he can still drop it on the low ground off that high ground pylon. Well, it's doable, but it's going to be a very difficult hold, Bio.
It is, and it's weird. Harstem seems to be getting ready to go for his own, like, more delayed robo play. If you take a look at it, he's got the pylon in the bottom middle. He's got a probe patrolling there. And the unfortunate thing for Harstem is that generally you would say if two players are going for an all-in and one player is attacking just a little bit later, theoretically, it's better for the slower player because they have more economy behind it. Technically, they're probably gonna have more production behind it. But
Skillous' army's tiny here, by the way. Skillous' army's tiny. He needs a few more units. He's waiting. Harstem, I think, can maybe take this fight, but this is where that War Prism shows up, and this is where it's going to be so difficult for Harstem to guarantee himself some kills. What will he target? He's kind of just shooting all over the place, and that means that he's not going to win the fight, because that's where that War Prism micro potential really makes a difference.
Yeah, this is what we're going to say. It's like, yeah, you know, technically Harstem should have more eventually. He's got more mining. He's setting up for the delay, the timing. But in this case, because there's a Warp Prism here, and that A gives you just infinite micro ability, and because it also lets you warp in at the front, Harstem, just by not having a lot of stuff here, it makes the life so hard for him. And now the force fields again are going to go down. The fact that there is an Immortal here for SKillous and not for Harstem, not just yet, is such a big deal. On top of the Warp Prism, because A, he got Blink, he got saves, and B, this Immortal does so much damage. Although SKillous targeting the Nexus instead of the army, it doesn't feel all that great.
We have energy for battery overcharge. SKillous is actually expanding at home as well, but I would be very surprised if SKillous would let his foot off the gas pedal now. There's really no need for it. You're in such a good spot. You've got that Warp Prism advantage. Batteries is something you have to worry about, though, and battery overcharge is absolutely terrifying. Harstem, his army is big at this point. It actually seems like the captain is just going to hold for now, and he's going to push SKillous back. Will he let that shade finish up? No, a hard pickup with that Warp Prism. But SKillous still in a bit of trouble. Harstem needs to be careful that he doesn't overdo it, but this is just chaos. In the end, it's SKillous who goes for the recall. Saves most of the units. Man, these PvPs are wild today. Safe to say that we are in the playoffs, Bio.
I mean, we were in the playoffs last week, and look how that one happened. But yeah, no, it is definitely lower. Roddy, you talked about this on Sunday. You talked about this at the open of the show. Lower bracket PvP might as well be its own matchup. It gets wild. There's so much stress on you to figure out what my opponent's doing. How can I properly defend that? People make mistakes, and that's when StarCraft gets really interesting. But for right now, 3 Adepts in the natural, they're going to try to curtail some of this large economy that Harstem's been able to build for himself. And while the Sentries, the new buff Sentries, Roddy, they're pretty good. We love to talk about them. They don't kill 3 Adepts.
Harstem is moving out, man. Like, he's just not turning around. So chasing that Prism is going to be very hard. What he will be able to do now is maybe drop good force fields, because SKillous' Prism is in the natural of Harstem, and that means that SKillous can no longer get those hot pickups going, Bio.
No, that's a problem. Yeah, there are 2 Immortals right there, but they're not really able to fire super easily Adept in the main base. That single Adept actually doing a really nice job. Meanwhile, on the other side here, 1 Immortal versus 2. Probe Pull is going to have to happen. Overcharge is there as well. I don't think Harstem breaks this. Not with 2 Immortals, not with a bunch of Sentries, not with the Overcharge, but he is getting damage done. He's maintaining this economic lead, and behind this, he's adding more gas. He's getting ready to move into whatever transition he wants to go for, whether that's Blink, whether that's +1 in this case, whatever it is he wants to go for. He's getting himself ready for it, but for now, we got a bit of a second. We got to breathe out, Roddy. We got to pause.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate moment to pause, right? Because SKillous is still harassing the natural of Harstem. Meanwhile, Harstem is setting up his own form of harassment as he just picked up the 2 Immortals. Funny how we haven't seen too many double Immortal War Prism play lately. And then we mentioned it in the beginning of a PvP, and now we have it non-stop. Or at least second time already in the series. But SKillous is good to continue. We are good to continue. I think I still like it for Harstem, especially because I think SKillous is going to have an incredibly difficult time dealing with this. His anti-air right now, 5 Sentries and a single Stalker.
Well, you know, Sentries, they strip the shields off the Prism, and, and then maybe something happens. What actually is kind of interesting, right? You talk about the Sentry change. Is it actually makes them pretty good against Immortals, right? Because Immortals, a lot of their power is in their shield. So, I mean, just look at how quickly the Guardian Shield or the Hardened Shield goes down, right? When the Sentries and everything's firing on top of it. So that does slow Harstem down just a little bit, you know, but this. So Harstem, he added on that extra gas that does show some desire to develop his tech. More charges on the way, +1. At what point do you take a third base though? Is it too scary at this point to try to go for that? Are you? I mean, I guess SKillous has to go on the map right now with how problematic things have been, and he's got a lot of immortals here, Roddy. It's 3 immortals. The army's not small.
Nope, this is going to be an interesting moment once more. We have a shield battery keeping those stalkers safe. So SKillous just says, you know what, I'm going to run to the other side of the map. You should get your Warp Prism home. This might be the moment that Harstem needs to use a recall. I really wouldn't hate it. He's got energy in the main. He's got energy, he's got energy in the natural, and he almost has enough energy in the main. And there is the recall. Is it too late or is it just in time? I would say it's just in time because the Immortals hop out of the Prism immediately. They start participating in the fight. Now it's Harstem's turn to activate battery overcharge again. Boy, oh boy, all the Protoss. Beautiful moves being used over here. BO, recall, overcharge, recall, overcharge. You gotta love it.
Yeah, and now the important thing as well is A, because there's a lot of gas done. Archons are on the way. +1's just about done. Charge is just about done. The army here of Harstem is about to get so much better. But again, we're seeing those adepts as well, so the Zealots not going to be as good as they might otherwise be. Key thing here as we talk about the Archons, these mass force field spams section off parts of the army, kind of done now, right? Rotterdam with Archons in the fray. Harstem's not, or SKillous is not really going to be able to go and get those really good force fields to make it so he can only fight part of the army. And yeah, the Archon's annoying in the main base, sure, but it's counter, or the Immortals in the main base, but we got counter Immortal drops, and that's going to force it back for now. And SKillous, apparently he just likes Slaves, Roddy. Second time, he's going to try to go for it again.
Yeah, he's loved it for a while. I sometimes think back of the era where we had SKillous and Hellraiser, who are big friends, and they were both playing in the European regionals. And they were both very fond of going mass gateway with Glaives, and SKillous would actually play it in a very defensive manner. But Harstem had enough of it. He just wants to attack. This time around, Harstem is going to start the fight with 3 Archons. However, committing to an attack with 4 gateways on power, it feels a little bit awkward. You're going to have to walk into force fields, but what Harstem can do here is break the force fields of SKillous. Meanwhile, SKillous has nothing to break the force fields of Harstem. So Harstem has more potential in that regard. But does Harstem really need to attack into the natural SKillous if he's got an upgrade advantage, attack advantage, and he's going up to 3 bases? I'd say the answer to that question is no.
I don't think he's trying to. I mean, yes, he's posturing, but I think that's... If he finds an opportunity, sure, maybe. But I think this is more posturing than anything else, Roddy. It's like, yeah, you know, I got a third base on the way. And the best way to make sure that I get that third base up, that I get shield batteries and pylons around it and start to mine out of it and do all of these beautiful things, is I just go and I posture on your side. I show up on the other side of the map. I pin you into your natural. I say, look, you don't get to expand here. And look at these Archon drops. They're going to get... I thought that was going to be so many more probes. It got very scary. Flushed it around for a second. But I think we're going to have to see a recall again because SKillous, he's on the other side of the map, and you need these Archons against the Zealots. This time, though, Harstem's been on 4 gas, not on 2. So he's got 2 Archons with the army. He can bring 2 more over. This is not nearly as scary as it previously was. Is now, hey, 2 ships in the night here.
Yep, you need to be careful there, by the way, if you're Harstem. You don't want to lose that prism. But Harstem's army just seems so powerful, man. This is 5 Archons in total. Good luck, have fun with your adepts, with or without resonating glaives. I think 5 Archons is just a few too many Archons to battle. Harstem could go back to his shield battery as he's warping in another Archon, but I just really believe in the army of the Flying Dutchman here who's representing the rebellion. 2 Immortals of SKillous are doing the crap tens there in the back. They were like left, right, left, right, left, right, but they just don't fire. And the power of the Archon is on full display over here.
That it is. And you know what? Fool me once, Roddy. Shame on me, but fool me twice. Shame on you. Or in the words of a famous saying, fool me twice, don't be fooled again. And that is a lot closer to what happened to Harstem in that game. Number 2, you add the gas, you get those Archons, and all of a sudden those Adepts that look really good against a bunch of Zealots, not as strong.
Now, this was a very silly game where it's like, I attack you, you attack me, I Warp Prism attack you, and then I will harass you with my Warp Prism, you recall, I recall, you battery overcharge, I battery overcharge, you recall, I recall. Like, it just got a little bit silly at one point, but just kudos to Harstem, because Harstem, it did feel that he knew all along where he wanted to get. And it's not standard to go up to all those gases, drop a Templar Archives as a 2-base Protoss. But guess what? Ghost River is not a standard map. That was not a standard game. So you're going to have to think outside of the box a little bit. And maybe that's where the experience of Harstem kicked in and took over, because he just got himself a way more powerful army than SKillous. He was already a bit ahead, sure, but that could have still been a scary game, a close game, if Harstem would have made different choices along the way. But when I look at 5 Archons, triple Immortal, and a War Prism above it, I'm like, yeah, good luck to the Adepts. Like, they're good, but they ain't that good.
Yeah, up a ramp as well, so they're not even really able to get a good concave. It's like, yeah, you know, it's not great, but we have a different map. You talk about Ghost River is not a normal map. Crimson Court is also not a normal map, but it's not a normal map in a different way, and it's probably closer to normalcy than Ghost River is, you know, so...
For sure. Ghost River is just really odd, mate. I actually, every single time I play on it, I go for a build that works well on other maps, and I'm like, what am I doing over here? I just got nothing done just because of the way that the bases are positioned, and they're so close to each other, but then you would eventually expand further away, but you're always afraid of just getting A-moved in your own natural or your third base. Crimson Court, all things considered in PvP, is actually somewhat standard, unless your name is Australia, who just has the coolest build of all time on this map. But I don't think we're going to see that.
Well, maybe we might see it later, because Australia he's not playing a PvP though, so.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Anyways, friends, game 3. In the upper right, tying it up in this series off of Archons, which happened to be very good in the matchup. East for the Rebellion. It's Harstem.
Fun, intriguing PvP series so far here in the lower bracket, and that is what we expected between two guys that are historically incredibly close to one another. In the bottom left side, representing Team Liquid, it is SKillous. Kita versus Kevin. What a battle.
I mean, look, Roddy, I know where your allegiances lie, right? We got a Kevin casting a Kevin, and the bias is just overwhelming.
But I gotta say, I think I spend more time with SKillous outside of video game tournaments in the Netherlands than I did with Harstem over the last few years. So, what if my allegiance actually lives with our visitor?
Oh, maybe, but look, Roddy, you know, Harstem's a famous YouTuber now. He's got like over 100,000 subs on YouTube or whatever it is. Like, he doesn't have time for us peons, the plebeians here that are toiling away in the mines of StarCraft. Dude, no, he's too good. He's living with the YouTube royalty, so I guess that makes sense.
Perhaps that's what it is. I mean, I've played a lot of Padel with SKillous. He's always down. I've invited Harstem many times, and there is always something. So, you know what? Maybe he's just too cool for me, Bio. I think you're onto it. I think you've got it all figured out over here.
I think it's important to point out that it is a rare man that is too cool for Rotterdam. So that says a lot. But for now, we're on
Unless we go back to high school and everybody was too cool for me. Why do you have to go there, mate? I'm not over it yet.
Hey, look, I think we all have our high school wounds. You know, people talk about friends, and I'm still really confused what that word means. But anyways, it's gonna be a Stargate opener from. Yeah, there we go. It's gonna be a Stargate from SKillous in this game number 3. Which, if you're worried about shenanigans, if you're worried about a bunch of different opportunities, this could be a nice way to go and A, get scouting, and B, keep yourself safe against most things. The good exception, the obvious exception, is of course like a 3-gate Warp Prism, 3-gate Robo type of idea. But it looks like for now, that's not exactly what we're going to see out of Harstem. In fact, the lone probe on the map from Harstem, it's not there anymore. It's gone.
Nothing he could really do to save it. Once those two Adepts are out, Adepts are obviously quicker with their ability to shade on top of a unit. But it's still nice to know for Harstem that he is going up against a double Adept. It's nice to know the first 2 units out of the gateways of your opponent. He is not going to have a probe here, because he just says, hey, if you want to go ahead and shade into my main base, kill 2 probes but lose 2 Adepts, be my guest. Adepts obviously a little bit more expensive, so that's kind of, I like this actually. Like, just why not just stand in your main with 4 units if you feel like you have nothing else to worry about? Because now at least you don't lose those 25 minerals over and over again.
Yes, the efficiency play. Why not? Now Harstem as well. There's you know, Roddy, I said this keeps you safe against everything but the 3-gate Robo. I don't think we're gonna see a lot. And then Robo in the main base, pylon on the map. But we're also seeing it's a delayed 3 or 4-gate Robo or whatever it is. Because yes, it is a Robo opener. There's a pylon on the map. We're going to see something go down there eventually. Just going to be depth warping in for right now. And they're going to warp in to defend this. They're going to get the probe. And because it is a slow warp in, it's just awkward for Harstem in this game. Oracle dives in before the battery's ready. 7 probes are dead. Yeah, one of them was on the map, so it doesn't really count. But 6 probes in the main base go down. It's all going wrong for Harstem. Yeah, he's got his natural just a little bit faster, but that doesn't matter.
The man had a plan, but then the plan just fell apart. After this pylon got scouted, he wanted to save those adepts that got warped in, and while doing that, he forgot about that Stargate that he absolutely did scout. And the Oracle flies in, activates Pulsar Beam a few seconds before the first battery's up. Now it's double Oracle. Double Oracle does not give a damn about a shield battery. Not even shield battery overcharge can save your workers here. An absolutely nightmare of a start for Harstem here in Game 3. Now it's all about how much can he get done on the other side of the map. He has lost a lot of probes, but he should be able to kill a decent amount of probes as well, especially with a sexy force field, but he doesn't want to waste the energy too soon. This is just chaos. I love the hallucinated units as well, just to tank up a couple of the shots of the defensive units of SKillous, and there comes one of those force fields. SKillous probably thought that this game was almost in the bag, and he still has an 8-worker lead, but he has an army and it's natural to worry about.
Yeah, it's funny. Roddy's got, or not Roddy, the other Kevin, Harstem. Oh no, he's hitting the unbuildable plate, so that's a lot of DPS wasted. But, you know, he's got the Robo, but there's no Warp Prism here. He's just warping in from the pylon on the map. He doesn't have the money for anything else. And the longer this goes, yes, 12 workers have died. Absolutely. That's a big deal. The attack is still finding some value here, but the longer this goes, the worse it is for Harstem. He has to get more done. Probes are going to get pulled. The Oracles, do you bring him into the fight here, or do you just dive with the... Yeah, no, he's going to run back. SKillous back into the main base very quickly, and even as Harstem is going to kill this base, maybe, even as he's equalized the worker count, that's only going to last for so long because 2 more Oracles are going to dive into the main base once again, and it's like, yeah, you know, you got it. Some damage here. Doesn't even matter.
Yeah, the Oracles are going to deal so much because Harstem put all of his probes on minerals, which I think is a smart play, but it obviously means you're not mining any gas. He spent all of his gas on Stalkers and Adepts to attack SKillous on the other side of the map, and that meant he had absolutely no gas in the bank, and he could not warp in any other units. SKillous brought those Oracles back, but then he's like, nah, actually barely have enough. Let's go ahead and send them into the main base one more time. And that turned into be the game-winning move in the end. That was chaos. It looked promising for Harstem, into a disaster, into promising, into perhaps good. And in the end, still SKillous who takes the 2-1 lead.
Yeah, you know, I started to believe, Roddy, and that's, you know, when I start to believe, that's generally when the player's about to lose the game. So, unfortunately there. Harstem, it was a good move. You know, he had one move in his toolbox, and he did the best of it. But yeah, not keeping any Stalkers back at home. Even if you leave like 1 or 2, the Oracles are still going to get damage done, right? You need to kind of leave 3, 4, and at that point, you're just sitting there and you don't have nearly as much power in the attack. So Harstem, you know, he had the one move available to him. Unfortunately, it really didn't work out, but that means now that SKillous is up 2-1, and that's just really good news for us because, Roddy, we won a 5-game series. Someone has to go up 2-1, and now we move on to Golden Aura. Clearly, Harstem's going to win this. We get to move to Game 5.
After all the 3-0s we had last Sunday, I don't want to be too greedy and demand 5-game series. As long as we avoid the 3-0s, you know, I won't say a word about it. If they all turn into 3-1, then I think eventually we can become a little more eager and ambitious and say, now I want a 5-game series. But I see no reason to assume why this cannot be a 5-game series. Like, these games have been all very chaotic. They're clearly different than the PvPs you see in the Monday night European weekly or when these two guys are streaming, which they both do a decent amount. They're always just like a little more streamlined. It feels that they are both playing underwater chess over here, and then all hell just breaks loose because, like, I have a plan, you have a plan, but I scout this, you scout that, and you see them make so many quick adaptations on the fly. So far, it's working out slightly better for SKillous, but 1 or 2 seconds difference of an Oracle showing up, a shield berry being dropped, and this could have easily been a 2-1 lead for Harstem.
Yeah, Roddy, you say adaptations, but I think it's just adaptations, at least based on the 2 games. Anyways, we have a 4th game here. It's Golden Aura. We're going to get right into it.
Back to one of the older maps. In the top left side, he needs the 07s in the chat right now to keep his tournament hopes and dreams alive over the ESL StarCraft2 Masters Spring Europe Regionals. Fighting for the Rebellion. This is Harstem.
And at the bottom right, in the red, he's one of Europe's hottest up-and-comers now, 1 map away from facing Showtime in the next round of the tournament. His name is SKillous.
Top 4 still feels like it's very far away for both of these players. Like, this is an incredibly tough series. The next one perhaps even tougher, because I don't think there is anybody in Europe that gets incredibly excited over playing PvP against Showtime. Not even MaxPax, even if MaxPax may believe in himself, rightfully so, because he's the best BO, but I think even MaxPax would prefer to not run into a Showtime. So top 4 is an incredibly tall mountain to climb for both of these guys, but you know, PvP is such a snowballing matchup, and it's a lot about confidence and belief as well in that whatever you're doing is going to work out and is going to be the right play, that it is always possible.
Yeah, you know, last season we saw Showtime send MaxPax down to the Shadow Realm. He beat him in 5 games off of Phoenix. I mean, it was a weird series, but it was just a bunch of Phoenix openers and mothership rushes and carriers and all these things. And I learned a lot about, most importantly, writing about that series, I learned a lot about different styles of Korean noodles from Zombie Grub. So, you know, that's what matters here. But yeah, you know, Showtime, he's one of these few players is, we're going to see SKillous just trap Harstem's probe in the main base. You know, he can't get out here. We're going to make sure this probe goes down. But Showtime's one of these few players that, I don't know if it's a winning record against MaxPax, but it's a lot closer than a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't think it's a winning record, but Showtime is just incredibly good in Phoenix against Phoenix, but he kind of hates it. So if the tournaments are not that big, if it's a minor, if there is not that much money or prestige on the line, then I kind of feel that Showtime is just often thinking outside of the box, and we're like, we'll do a bit of this, we'll do a bit of that. Obviously, when it comes to online StarCraft, there is nothing bigger than the Europe Spring Regionals or the Europe Winter Regionals, if it was winter. So then Showtime will gladly play the style that he may not find very fun, but what he absolutely believes gives him the biggest opportunity to win a series. We'll worry about whoever is going to play Showtime in the next round. Now focus on this one, as things have been incredibly hectic between Harstem and SKillous. I want to say this is the most normal setup we've seen so far. 4 games into this best of 5. Both of them a very respectable, honest 2-gate expand on the low ground, but both of them going for the Robo as a follow-up. This used to be the least common. These days, it's up there, right, BO? Might even be the most common tech of choice.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like generally in a PvP, and you know, maybe I see European games less, so maybe I'm out of date on the European meta, but I feel like most games you see Twilight into Robo. Right? You get that mobility on the map, you get Blink generally, and you're able to go and make something happen, and then you go into Robo because the servers are great, and you don't want to fall down to a Twilight DT type of idea. Sure, fine. But I feel like generally we see Twilight into, or Robo into Twilight, or there we go, Twilight into Robo, not necessarily the other way around. But in this game, SKillous, yeah, he's got his natural on the way, but there's a Prism out early. Harstem's the one that's developing his tech just a little bit more. So the question now is, we see SKillous full scout Harstem's main. How much does he get done with this? Is this Prism, what are we at? 2 gateways right now? Yeah, so it's 2-gate Prism. This is likely going to be just to go and put 2 adepts in the main base to Harstem and try to get some damage done that way. And good news for Harstem right now, he had the hallucination on top. He saw the Prism go out. He knows what's happening. So this theoretically shouldn't get that much done.
I'm very confused. Harstem just warped in 2 Zealots in his main.
Ooh.
And for a split second, I was like, is that a mistake? Because who the hell warps in 2 Zealots in a 4-minute, 30-second game? And then I see him fire up charge, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So now I'm gonna assume that those 2 Zealots were not a mistake. This is just so weird. Who does this?
Harstem with his back against the wall is apparently the story here. This is gonna be a 2-base charge lot immortal, Archon all in. Roddy, is that what I'm looking at right now?
Every Diamond League Protoss player that's watching this right now is like, oh, come on, guys, this is so standard. You just attack with Zealots, with Charge, and Archons. It's like, yeah, but don't really see that. At the highest level of a 2-base setup, it's really not that common. And I'm sure that Harstem is still going to go up to 3 bases as well. First game, he did something that looks somewhat like that, but there he at least made a couple of Immortals first, right? So we made Immortals, Sentries, then we went Zealot Charge. That I'm familiar with. Just pure Zealots and then straight into Archons immediately. So honestly, at first that I see this at this level being done by a man like Harstem. Curious to see how it's going to work out. I think this is really going to surprise SKillous, but SKillous already is working on a bit of a wall-off in his natural. So maybe he saw those Zealots and he's like, you know what? I'm kind of afraid. Maybe he's seen this and he said like, yeah, I'm going to respect this. This may look silly, But I know that this can be powerful if you get a proper surround on my army and a lot of surface area for your zealots. So SKillous is showing there's a lot of respect, and zealots don't do very well against SimCities.
No, they don't. I think what he saw, really, he saw the hidden Twilight, the hidden Templar Archives at the back of the Natural, and he saw the gateways down the way. So I think that's probably what rung the alarm bells. But, you know, you talk about what does this do for Harstem? Yeah, sure, attacking into the SimCity, probably not going to work out all that well, but he got his third base up much faster than what SKillous has. And yeah, he's down an upgrade. That's not great. Force field, it's not really going to hit all that well. So being down an upgrade is not incredible. SKillous, he's reacting with glaives once again, but again, this is a 4-gas Harstem, not a 2-gas, so he has the Archons for that. And now with a big warp into the main base, I don't think this +2 completes.
That pylon is so important. Battery overcharge gets used. Very well done by SKillous. If that pylon dies, -2 gateways, minus the forge, minus resonating glaive adept, SKillous would be in all sorts of trouble. Battery overcharge saves the day for now, but at the same time, Harstem is also going to attack the third base. And Harstem doesn't really need to stick around in the main forever. As long as he can just get a kill or a cancel on the third, he's probably already kind of happy. SKillous keeps the Nexus alive, goes for the recall. Recall only a War Prism. What are we looking at? And now the Zealots and the Archons are back in the main, and Harstem can still go for that incredibly important pylon.
It's a fake. It was, look, I'm recalling. I'm defending against this, but you're never going to expect it because I think there's going to be an attack in the main base. Now, you say they're back in? There was a recall in the main base, right? So that's a new Archon. Those are new Zealots. Now an Archon on the right side goes down, but this third base is dead. You know, Roddy, okay, there we go. Now the Nexus is dead. Roddy, as we look at this game, we look at this series is the most classic distillation of PvP I've ever seen, right? It's just mind games upon mind games. Glaives are done. Somehow this pylon is still alive. Somehow +2 is going to complete. Somehow glaives were allowed to complete. And as much as I kind of like Harstem's position, he's killed the third base. He's getting this damage done. SKillous hot picks up a single probe to make sure it stays alive. This is still going to be +2 versus +0 for a little bit. That starts to matter quite a bit here.
Yep, and Harstem obviously does not have Blink, so warping in a couple of defensive Stalkers to deal with a Adept Immortal attack is not going to be that great. But what Harstem can do is just get a bunch of cannons and batteries. I see one battery at the third, he's getting another one. He's actually turning around and he's just trying to fight this. If I was Harstem, I would really just use basic math right now and be like, hey, 3 bases is better than 2. Let's go ahead and make sure that you are forced to attack into me and get some value out of the static defenses. Oh, the War Prism of Harstem just got picked up in the natural. It was carrying an Archon as well, so SKillous doesn't have to pay attention to that War Prism anymore. Harstem losing that Prism, that's bad, because Prisms are very useful in picking up Archons and dropping them back near batteries.
Now, good news, though, is Harstem, at least he has the gas to make sure, well, not at the moment, but he's on 6 gas. He has a lot. His Zealot run by is getting ready to make something happen. And even as we're looking at +2 versus +1, I look at this army of SKillous, and I mean, there are just, this doesn't break this many Archons. I mean, surely not.
+2 is useful though, like it really comes down to the engagement. It's also very hard to fight with 8 Archons at once. One of the Archons of SKillous is going to take a lot of damage immediately, but an excellent save. Like Harstem, his army is good, but it's just very awkward to fight with, because all of these Archons are so big and clunky, and how do you make all of them participate in the fight at once? But if you only attack with 3 Archons at once, that's where all these Adepts, Immortals, and even Stalkers with +2 are going to pick Archons up one by one. So this is a very awkward fight. The Adepts are shining so far. Harstem needs to keep on running back to those batteries, as a lot of probes are falling on the other side of the map to, I guess, a couple of Zealots of Harstem. That's working out well, but SKillous has a 25 army supply lead.
Yeah, it's all well and good for Harstem that SKillous has no economy, but SKillous didn't really have an economy even before that, right? It's all about this all-in coming out of SKillous right now. I think there's a third base in the way, but I guess it just got canceled anyway. So SKillous are very much all in at this point. Archon staying alive even still. And again, this Archon count for Harstem's really nice, and the army supply can be a lie, depending on how things go. If you can get a good force field, get on top of these Adepts, they will pop, even up an upgrade. But how do you... Getting the Archons into the fray here, and there's, Adepts are going to get in the main base here. You absolutely don't cancel the shade. Adepts in the main base, but it's actually not all that great. Immortals are going to go down. This was a mistake from SKillous. All of a sudden, Harstem, yeah, sure, there are Adepts in the main base, but look at this. A bunch of the tech went down.
Will Harstem recall? Yes, Harstem is going to recall. Pretty large army. Now SKillous is going to run back into the natural, but the force field goes down. The Archon needs to break the force field, but the next force field have gone down, and the next force field goes down. SKillous' army is stuck. Harstem says, mate, you wanted to get into my main base. Now you're staying in my main base for a little longer than you were planning. And this now, in the end, obviously is more than good enough for the captain. One of the most awkward fights in PvP I've seen in a while. Mass Archon versus a crazy amount of adepts with +2.